All right. I guess we'll just hop on into it. You ready?
Yeah, man.
All right. You might want to lean forward. Actually, I'll just pull the microphone forward a little bit. Here we go.
I'm going to move further away, actually.
Create as much distance as possible.
Just record the whole episode like us this close.
Hello.
That's how we have a natural conversation.
I think this is an ASMR video. Isn't that right?
Yeah, at this point, yeah.
Anywho. Not fucking around. All right. Hey there, Film Buds. Welcome back to the Film Buds podcast. I am your host, Paul, and I'm joined by, of course, longtime friend of the show, Nick.
Hello, everybody.
How are you doing, Nick?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing?
You know, I'm doing pretty well. How's your week been?
It's been very busy. It's been pretty productive, though, so I feel good about that.
That's good. The last time you and I spoke, you had just avoided narrow disaster at a at a music festival that went the way of the Fire Festival.
Sure. Man, you know, part of me, if I was younger, I would have been there.
Even if you knew it was chaos.
Yeah.
Been like, you know what, it's worth it.
Yeah, for sure, yeah, because I would have still jumped to the fire.
You know what, I do know that, because when we were roommates, you definitely were wild man enough to be like, you know what, for the music.
I did that plenty of times.
Yeah.
I'll go to plenty of unsafe places if I think there's going to be like some very filthy music going on.
Yeah. Well, Nick is here to talk about two films. Today we're talking about Frida, and we're talking about Under the Same Moon. And we're talking about these films because yesterday marked the beginning of Hispanic Heritage Month. And actually today is Mexican Independence Day, also known as the Cry of Dolores.
It's perfect because both of these films take place in Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like we planned it.
It's nuts.
So, but they're both pretty exciting, and I definitely wanted Nick to come and talk with us about this because, you know, me and another white person sitting here talking about Hispanic heritage and these two films might seem a little disingenuous.
Instead, we're gonna do a half-white person.
Yeah. But it's gonna be a good episode, and I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. They're both really good films. We're gonna talk about both of them. We're gonna talk about the trailer for West Side Story that just dropped. We're gonna talk about the trailer for Nightmare Alley that just dropped. We're going to talk about what we've been watching. And it's going to be a good time. So
Yay.
Let's go ahead and jump right into it with our first film about artist Frida Kahlo with Frida. And we have a clip, so take a listen.
Behind the romance.
We'll have to get married, you know.
But you don't believe in marriage.
Of course I do. I've had 2 wives already.
To Diego and Frida.
Behind the glamour.
You paint her too, Mrs. Rivera.
Just killing time.
She's much better than me. You'll see.
Behind the madness lies the mystery of one of the most seductive and most intriguing women of ours or any time.
So that was Frida, which came out in 2002. It's directed by Julie Taymor, who most people, or not most people, I guess, but some people might know from her Broadway fame as the director of Lion King.
If you know her, that's probably what you know her from.
Yeah. And it stars Selma Hayek as Frida, Alfred Molina as her husband and artist Diego Rivera, Jeffrey Rush, Diego Luna, a very young Diego Luna, Antonio Banderas, Ashley Judd, Roger Reese, and the plot is a biography of artist Frida Kahlo, who channeled the pain of a crippling injury and her tempestuous marriage into her work.
You nailed tempestuous. I would have panicked reading that out loud.
And her... Oh, no.
Thank you. It helps that I read this like a day ago, I think.
He practiced.
Yeah. It did a little prep.
He studied for the test, folks.
So, Nick, why don't you take this one away for us? What did you think?
Okay, yeah. Frida is pretty good. Good acting here is probably the best, like, Salma Hayek performance I've seen. One of the best. She was nominated for the Oscar for this, I think. I'm pretty sure, if not the Oscars, then I'm sure like a billion other awards.
Yeah, nominee.
Yeah. I think, the script definitely has, the same like biopic notes, and the structure is similar to that, but I think her story is different enough and interesting enough. It's still a very smart movie. It's a very, very pretty movie, very colorful. I love like the transition between scenes where they kind of like set up one of her paintings. I don't know, it's one of those movies, and Under the Same Moon, this other movie we're going to talk about after, is the same. It was very refreshing to see like two like smart, like well thought out movies. I don't know. Maybe it's just from watching too much stuff. Just so much stuff
Feels barely put together.
Yeah, or it just doesn't. It's not operating on all levels.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like like for both of these films, like every part of them is working in conjunction with the other, and it's telling you something about like the character or the characters and whatever moment they are at in the story currently. Like that goes through like visually, like dialogue, and I don't know. It's it's all the little things that come together.
No, for sure. Were you at all familiar with like Frida Kahlo in any kind of capacity before this?
No,
I mean, beyond like the obvious knowing.
No. I'm not. I'm not big into like art. Period. It's not like a Frida Kahlo thing specifically. I'm not huge into like the world of visual art. And yeah, I mean, I know who she is from like pop culture, obviously. But I read a little bit before watching the movie, which equals like a Wikipedia page and some, like profile of her. And then I read like about the production of the film,
Okay,
and everything. That's
interesting.
Yeah,
I'm gonna circle back around to the production of the film. I like the movie a lot. I agree with you. I think that for the most part, if you really boiled down just the narrative, like if I edited out all of the fancy bits of the movie, it's a very straightforward biopic.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Not to. Hopefully, I don't throw off your train of thought here. Yeah, that's. Yeah, if like on paper, it's a pretty simple.
Yeah.
To me, but there's so much going on with how it's presented. And,
What I think is really intelligent about the movie is that she does decide, that this movie is about a visual artist, so it should, be an equally visual experience. And also, Julie Taymor is, of course, a very visual artist as well.
I mean, you'd hope it'd look like that.
Yeah. But she really does a great job, and honestly, the two things that elevate this movie from just being another biopic are 100% the performances and the presentation of the narrative itself.
Yeah.
Salma Hayek does do a great job. I agree with you. This is one of my favorite Salma Hayek performances. I think that she's great in some things and then just completely lost in other things every once in a while.
I think I think she gets cast in really shitty roles.
Yeah.
A lot. Even if like the movie or show or whatever it is isn't like shitty in itself.
Yeah.
I feel like she gets stuck. A lot has to do with the double whammy of like racism and sexism, obviously. And then
yeah, because she is both
and then being a sex icon like on top of that, being, you know, which sucks because she's obviously like extremely talented.
Yeah. And like the early 2000s, I feel like is definitely more, you know, when I think about like my memory of Selma Hayek, I feel like the early 2000s is probably definitely more when I remember seeing more Selma Hayek than as opposed to, you know, I mean, she's definitely come around again a little bit.
Yeah, and now she's all in like a bunch of like comedies and stuff like that. Like she was in the friggin' Hitman's Bodyguard, which
and Hitman's Bodyguard's wife,
which I despise.
Mm-hmm.
I hate that movie. I'm very comfortable saying I really hate that movie.
But no, so she does great. Alfred Molina does tremendous, but I mean,
oh man, Alfred Molina.
He's one of my favorites. What a tremendous talent.
He's so good.
You know, my wife and I recently watched Spider-Man 2.1, and Alfred Molina's so good in that movie. Like, he really does great.
That it's one of the best movies ever made right there. Spider-Man 2.1 specifically. Spider-Man 2, like, for sure, you know, it's somewhere in there. Spider-Man 2.1, though.
That's where it's at.
If you haven't seen that thing, oh, baby.
Yeah. If you don't know, now you know.
Now you know, man. Now you're in the club.
Welcome.
Get smart. Get with it.
No, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed a lot of the chemistry that was... the cast just in general, I think, had tremendous chemistry across the entire picture. If I really had any complaint about...
It's not afraid to get sexy.
No, it's not. It is. It's a very... But, you know, I think that it's very obvious that she was very comfortable with the human form, you know, obviously, in her art. And I think that it was an interesting way to sort of take the movie, to just sort of have the human form regularly on display, because it is such a regular topic of visual art, you know, the human form and the human form entwined with another human.
Yeah.
So no, I really enjoyed those elements of the film. My only I guess hard critique of the movie for me is that actually I guess it's twofold. One, I did feel like I really needed a little bit more, before I watched it, context of who she was.
Sure.
I watched it, and then I hit a point while I was watching it where we hit pause for a little bit.
Were you like deep into like the communist meetings, and you were like, what?
No, and I was like, okay, I understand, you know, communism and how it was, you know, taking different fold at different places at this time, but I have no idea how it fits into Mexican history in any sort of specific way.
Sure.
And that kind of thing, and how Frida Kahlo, especially at that particular time, fit into that.
So it wasn't clear to you, like, what, maybe not what, like, the time period was, but just, like what it meant. Like, what exactly is currently happening, like, in the larger context of the
and I
country?
really felt like, on a certain level, I needed to go in with a better understanding of her life at large and what some of the history was that her life intertwined with, to really deeply appreciate all of what was
that's
going
interesting
on with
also. I was talking to my wife, my beautiful wife, about this movie earlier, and I talked about how, like, I appreciated, obviously, like, how intertwined her life was with politics, both through herself and her husband, but I had a hard time finding the, like, how the two intertwined, like you were saying, like her personal life and her personal journey, and the greater, like, you know, political, artistic, you know,
absolutely,
crusade career, for sure. But yeah, definitely. What I like is how the film carries through. Like, everything's pushing towards this thing that, like, her whole life was pain. Yeah. Both in the physical sense and the emotional sense.
Yeah.
And it like you said, it's what helps it become very literal. Or I think my wife said this actually, like how her art isn't exactly up for interpretation. Like it's not exactly subtle or like, you know.
No, yeah.
It's pretty and the movie does a great job of this also, showing like that specific moment in her life and like how it translated into this particular art that she did, this particular work of art. And you're just like, oh, like, of course.
Yeah. Well, and if I'm not mistaken, some people labeled her as a surrealist, but if I'm, and I could be mistaken, I read somewhere that she considered herself a magical realist more than a surrealist. And I think that that's pretty fair.
Yeah.
You know, it's very grounded. You know, it's not misshapen. It's very clear what she's depicting. And yeah, it really, I think it works well. My only other complaint is that beyond the lack of the context and maybe it's not, I guess, a fault of the film, maybe it's more a fault of myself and history education at large. But my only other fault is, I felt like they carved through time like butter, to a point where for me it was sometimes a little bit hard to tell how much time had passed in between certain events.
Yeah.
Where suddenly
it's not one that like tells you, you know, through like 5 years later or whatever.
No,
you know?
it's very subtle through very specific makeup and costume and period choices.
Yeah.
That you have to really be paying attention to be like, okay, time has definitely passed.
Right.
You know? They're not quite dressing her the way that they did, you know, just a bit ago.
Yeah, the costumes start to change for Alfred Molina. They start making him older.
Mm-hmm.
They gray his hair and everything.
But that's probably really...
Said he gained like 30 pounds. Like he looks huge, and I'm not talking about like he looks like fat. He looks like very tall. He just looks so big.
It's because of the high-waisted pants, if I'm not mistaken, and I think that's why people used to try and wear the high-waisted pants, was to try and make it accentuate the leg line.
Oh.
Because visually now your hips aren't here, your hips are here.
Right.
You know, and so it made you seem taller. Because if you go back and look at even like
how you look like more
how
more
movie
mouse,
stars dressed,
whoever the heck it is,
in like the 40s and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, even Howard Hughes and stuff, all the pants were way up higher, and it was to try and like accentuate.
You've blown my mind right now.
That's a little bit of men's
that wouldn't work on me. I'm
history.
too short for that. I need some height to start with. I have none.
You're not that short, Nick.
I mean, I guess not. I don't know. Like, compared to what?
I don't know. How tall is Alfred Molina?
I'm sure he's pretty tall.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, thank you. Whoa.
Wow, big man.
The thing we keep under the stairs is speaking.
That's why there's such a big height difference between them. It's because there's a foot between them. She's 5'2".
Oh wow!
Yeah,
here's Lauren coming in with the live research.
It's their first like up close meeting, and it's how they shoot it. Also, is when he comes down. Like she calls to him, and he's working on the mural, and he comes down, and the way it's shot is like he looks so
well.
Tall.
And I feel like maybe it was a note from someone, but I also feel like he's very much constantly running around with a very...
he's got the chest
yeah,
out,
he always
man.
has the chest very out, the very
Doc
arched
Ock
back.
entirely.
Yeah.
And it's on the chest.
And so it makes him seem, I think, a lot bigger every time he walks
If you guys
into...
haven't seen, I'm sure you have, but you need to remember the Law and Order SVU episode with Alfred Molina. So good. So good. Highly recommend it. All right.
But no, I think that's kind of my overall thoughts. How do you feel about Julie Taymor, I guess, as a director overall?
Have
great.
you
seen other...
I wish she did more stuff. What else did she? She did Across the Universe.
She did Across the Universe. She was actually the original director of Spider-Man: Turn Off the Dark, the Broadway Spider-Man musical.
That's amazing.
She
was the first one to abandon ship. Then.
She was apparently removed, and it ended up in litigation that went to mediation.
Oh, love what? Removed for what?
She was removed from directing.
Yeah, but like, what'd she do?
I think it was that the producers had just sort of lost faith at that point.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact ins and outs.
I don't know who they murdered someone to get that show made or something. I don't understand, because like legit curse.
Yeah.
Legitimately cursed.
Okay.
Foolish to keep continuing.
She did Titus back in 1999 with Anthony Hopkins.
No clue.
She did Across the Universe. She did The Tempest with, if I'm not mistaken, this is the version of The Tempest where they take Prospero and make him Prospera, and they cast Helen Mirren.
What on earth is this cast? Helen Mirren?
Felicity Jones, Jaimin Hansu, Russell Brand, Reeve Carney, David Strathairn, Alan Cumming, Chris Cooper, Alfred Molina, Ben Whishaw. And then she recently did, I guess, a version, or not recently, it was 2014, Midsummer Night's Dream. And then she, in 2020, did The Glorias, which was a movie about Gloria Steinem, with Julianne Moore, Alicia Vikander, Janelle Monáe.
So many movies, man.
And Gloria Steinem, I guess, also portraying herself. That's Julie Taymor. Our old... I won't name who it was, but one of our old theater teachers in high school claims to have known Julie Taymor.
I won't say who it was.
But one of our old high school theater teachers claims to have known Julie Taymor, and says that she's not a fan.
Okay, like as a person.
Yeah, it's described as hard to work with.
Oh, okay, vague. Could literally mean anything.
High on the horse. A little fond of herself.
Sure, I would be too if I made the fucking Lion King.
Yeah, and it had 1, 2 Tonys for it. Yeah, that's fair. No, that's a fair point.
Because she can, she can still ride that. That's still going on.
No,
that's
fair.
not a thing that happened and ended. You can still go see it. It's still happening, people. It's a party.
Do you have any final thoughts on Frida?
Yeah, good movie. If you look up behind the scenes,
bring up the production.
For Salma Hayek's life was so terrible at the time because Harvey Weinstein produced this film.
Oh no!
And did you not read this?
No.
Oh, I think it's on the IMDb or maybe on Wikipedia or something. Where like he was threatening to shut down the film over and over, unless she did sexual favors and or did like a full did a full woman on woman sex scene like for the movie.
And that's why that's in the movie.
Yeah. I guess so.
Because there's the encounter with the singer in Paris.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it was meant to be like more graphic than it is. Or maybe that's it. I have no clue. But yeah, this was a part of like the
Harvey Weinstein scandal.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. She wrote like Salma Hayek wrote up like this whole thing when it first like in 2019 or whenever. And the story of like the making of Frida was a part of that and everything.
Wow.
So there's the dark thing behind that. Also, Madonna wanted to make this movie and play Frida. For a while, which would have been kind of funny. But also kind of not.
Wow. All right.
That's all I got, folks. And again, you can just look that up on like Wikipedia or IMDb. This isn't some crazy... I didn't dig too deep.
Yeah. What's your star rating for the film?
Oh, I don't know.
Out of 5.
3.5.
Okay.
3.5, 4.
Yeah, I was thinking 4. For me, some of the visual technique that was on display for me was enough to bump it up.
Good. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I like Julie Taymor as a director for sure. I really liked what was going on there.
No, I think that's all fair. I didn't know that about the film. That's quite horrific.
Pretty bad.
I guess if I had any, final thoughts.
I didn't say that like with grace, and I apologize. That's just how I get through things. I don't like saying things like a news anchor,
No, I get that. Sterility is not your thing.
No.
Yeah. I'll say this. I really enjoyed watching the movie because it was also... I'll say this about the movie. It was engaging enough, and it hit me enough that I definitely wanted to know more about her, and I wanted to know more about the context of her life. And it got me going down a path of reading more and learning more. And so...
Yeah, for sure.
Even if I give the film kind of a nick on feeling like I needed a context when I watched it, it did also give me interest enough and drive enough to want to go and learn more. She's a fascinating woman with a very fascinating visual style. There's a good video from Nerd Writer that's all about her art style that's worth a watch. It's I think like 7 or 8 minutes, so it's not too taxing of a watch.
I learned that she remained pretty unknown until like the 70s or something when she was rediscovered.
Yeah.
This was like a couple decades after she died. Yeah, one of those things.
Yeah, a lot of artists have this kind of, some of them achieve some success when they're alive, but a majority of artists are really primarily posthumously celebrity.
Yeah.
It's usually after the fact when there's now no more coming out, and there's a limited supply sort of being passed around that it becomes in vogue. I'd give it a 4. Moving on, I suppose, we have our next film called Under the Same Moon.
La Misma Luna.
That's right. And it came out in 2007.
Good year.
And as always, it was a good year. That's the year of No Country for Old Men, There Will Be Blood, Michael Clayton. Great cinematic year. Also, our freshman year of high school, I believe.
Good music year. Good year.
Yeah. So, as always, we have a clip. So take a listen.
My mom says, when I miss her, I should look at the moon, because she'll be looking at it too. She's been working in America for 4 years, so she can bring me there soon.
Carlitos?
Mommy! But when my grandma died, I couldn't wait anymore.
So, Under the Same Moon, as I said, came out in 2007. It is directed by Patricia Riggin, and it stars Eugenio Derbez, Kate Del Castillo, Adrian Alonso, Maya Zapata, Carmen Salinas, America Ferrera, and Ernesto D'Alessio. And the premise, the plot, is a young Mexican boy illegally travels to the U.S. to find his mother, who is illegally in the U.S., after his grandmother passes away.
I laugh because they just put who is illegally in the U.S. in parentheses.
Yeah.
What on earth? Who wrote that? Come on. We're trying to sell this movie here, folks. Illegally travels to the U.S. to find his mother, who is illegally in the U.S.
They could have just said, that the boy crosses the border, or travels.
A young Mexican boy, if you want to keep illegally, illegally travels to the U.S. to find his mother after his grandmother passes away.
Yeah. I hadn't seen this one. I'll go ahead and start on this one. I hadn't seen this one. I remember actually seeing the trailer for it. I feel like I was shown the trailer for this actually in community college Spanish. And I really can't say why
I never heard
feel
of this
that
movie.
way. Never at all.
No, never.
Okay. So before I landed on the films for this week, I actually went and I did a little search, and I searched Hispanic filmmakers because I was like, oh, maybe I'll pick one and do like a sort of dive on them or something like that. And when I first did like a search for Hispanic filmmakers, the list was, I'll generously call it broad. It included Jennifer Lopez. It included Eva Longoria.
Okay.
And like, while that's all valid, I was looking, a little bit more for like a Quentin Tarantino, but from some sort of Hispanic heritage where we could maybe do a dive. And then it was obviously, Guillermo del Toro and
Robert Rodriguez.
and so then it was like all of the obvious choices. So then I was like, okay, let me go and see if I can't find like a list that someone has put together of like some films
Sure.
that they suggest watching for Hispanic heritage. And Under the Same Moon is like on all of them.
Yeah, thank you for answering. Because this was going to be what I was going to ask was like, how did you decide on these two films? Besides them, just being Mexican.
So it kind of came about from two reasons. I decided on Frida because my sister is a huge fan of the movie Frida. And I'd seen like bits of it, but it had never been one, even though she watches it a lot. Yeah. It was one that I had never actually like sat down and watched with my sister. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I think that I should just go ahead and watch Frida, and I'm a little bit iffy on Julie Taymor, and maybe this will like sway me in some kind of way on Julie Taymor. And I chose Under the Same Moon because I thought that it was it from everything that I read, it had a lot of positive feedback. And I also thought that it would be a topical and relevant story because it is still very much a topical and relevant issue, going on.
I love this movie.
Yeah, I had a hell yeah. And I thought,
really good.
I was like, we're doing something about like, this artist. Let's go and try and do something that's like a slice of life, a little bit more of a grounded kind of narrative.
Yeah.
That's also more modern. I went more heritage way back a little bit, about 100 years plus some time.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's do something a little bit more modern. And the truth is, like, the other reason that I chose them is that the options were a little bit spotty. It was Coco,
right.
was a list that one that I saw on a lot of
You
lists.
have like the three like animated movies,
Yeah, because I saw what is it, Book of Life?
The Book of Life, Coco. One just came out. It's like Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Vivo,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so it was a little bit sort of spotty. And so I wanted to try and pick two that were also still a little bit more off the beaten path, but also were still, of interest to me that I thought would also be good picks in general for. And it actually just coincided that we recorded them on. This is actually a little bit of happy accident that we are recording them on Mexican Independence Day. That is just a little bit of happy accident. But yeah, so that's kind of why I picked them. But I had a great time with this movie. I absolutely adored it. What an incredible child performance.
So good.
Great performance from all the cast.
All around, man.
And I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. How did you feel?
Dude, I really like this movie because it takes a pretty like worn out premise by this point, right? Mm-hmm. It's Hispanic, it's a Latino movie, whatever, and it's about crossing the border again, like how dangerous it is, and all this and all that. But this takes like that really familiar premise, and it's smart. Like, I don't know. It's smart. It sometimes subverts what you think is going to happen in scenes. Like, some scenes still feel tense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what the silly premise says. It's a kid who is all alone, and he attempts to get to Los Angeles to find his mother, and his mother moved there 4 years ago at this point, and has been working and trying to send him money. And he doesn't have like a phone number or an address or anything. But it's kind of it's weirdly like you could watch this with the family.
Yeah, it's PG-13.
Yeah, like it's still properly like tense when it needs to be,
but not overly so.
This is like it's uplifting, and not in a cheesy way. It
ends so well.
It's so weird how this could easily go one way or another. It could either be like really cheesy and just really stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And like over dramatic and manipulative just by like sheer premise alone, right? Or it could be like way too much. I went in expecting this movie to like ruin my life. I read the synopsis and I was like, oh great. I was like like what a bummer. Gosh, no, but I don't know. I feel like I'm not doing a good job describing this movie. It really exceeded all of my expectations, I guess, is what I want to say.
I'll tell you why I think the ending lands.
Because it has this is what I was talking about, like the whole movie, every like visual decision that's made, every like line of dialogue that's made is pushing the whole. It's pushing the character's journey. It's pushing the larger, like political like context.
Mm-hmm. But I think that the reason that the ending works especially well is a few-fold. Minor spoilers. I mean, I guess, kind of major-ish spoilers, but, spoilers ahead. That's all I'll say. So, I think it works because in the end, in our journey leading up to it, we don't see whether or not she gets off of the bus. And that's, I think, the first thing that really works well for the ending, is we don't know whether or not for a fact that it clicked and was convincing enough that seeing the kid on the payphone, whether it clicked and was convincing enough for her to get off the bus. So when the kid gets there, we don't know whether the mom is there or if she is already actually on her way. And this movie has done a good job at subverting your expectations enough that you're convinced that it might say, to hell with you. The mom is in fucking Mexico.
Too bad, kid.
and so like the movie has convinced you that it really might do it.
I was bad about it too, because this movie was, like you said, it was like edge of your seat kind of stuff. And like when it got close to the end, I was bad and kept checking how much time was left. But there was like 5 minutes left, and I was like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "This is gonna end horribly." I was in a panic.
I think the other thing that works for it is that when they finally are reunited in person, we don't actually see them.
We don't see
come
the
together.
Physical embrace.
The only time that we actually get to see them together is when he fantasizes his mother when he's looking up at the same moon. And that's the only time that we actually get to see them in the same frame together, is when he's fantasizing about where his mother is and imagines, her being there next to him. And that's the only time that we get to see them together. And then when we see them the next time, we don't actually get to see them come together, but we know that this is going to be them together forever. and that's why it lands.
So good.
That's the long explanation for why the ending ends up not being hokey.
Yeah,
because the hokey ending is them running and meeting in the middle of the crosswalk.
Yeah. And it also, even in that moment where he's like, I'm here, I'm at that place, and even when you see the woman standing there, I thought they were going to play It's Not Her.
Mm-hmm.
And because her back is turned when you first see her there, standing by the payphone.
Yeah. No, yeah.
And I was like, oh no.
They're going to do it to me.
They're going to kill me.
This movie has set out to murder me.
Gosh, no. Just so good. So honest.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not like overly brutal and like overly tragic.
No, it's just straightforward.
Yeah.
And I think what's also really effective is that
it's tragic in the larger context that anybody's life has to be this way, and the movie's smart enough to really go ahead and say it. Like I can't remember the character's name, but when he tells Carlitos, where he's like, you think anybody like he wants like this life?
Enrique,
yeah, when he's like, you think anybody like wants to like do this, when he's talking about like, you know, your past 3 days where you were picking tomatoes and, you know, just working to have a place to sleep that night, you know, and stuff like that, you know, going from place to place. Yeah, it's, you know, it's like, yeah, this is bullshit.
Yeah. Well, and I think what's smart about this version of the, you know, border crossing story is that by grounding it in the perspective of the child, any audience member who is unfamiliar with some of this stuff is discovering it with him.
Right.
You know, and that's always the brilliance of using the child as your perspective character, is that you can take a child, put them into adult circumstances, and go, this is what people have to deal with.
Oh, now,
you know?
Now my brain works.
And you can introduce them and walk them through the ins and outs of this things, because the children doesn't understand, so now you have to explain it to the child. And then you get to explain it to the audience.
Yeah.
And so I think that this movie, you talk about how this movie really works, and it's because this movie is a very effectively thought out film. From the perspective of the narrative, to what he faces, to how he handles what he faces, to the choices that we see other characters make. You know, I think that it's just an overall really effective film. And I was really touched by it, and I was also blown away by the young boy's performance. I thought that Carlitos did absolutely he broke my heart in so many subtle ways all the time. When he gets up and pays the bill while having his meal with his dad.
He another moment where I was just so upset was when he gets out of the when the car gets impounded and he leaves it, and they show that he dropped his money.
Oh, God.
All of his money. I screamed. I said, why would you do this?
No, yeah. Just great film.
Yeah, man. It's good. This is what I'm talking about. Just everything's working there.
Yeah. I really, if you haven't seen it, absolutely see this one. Like, I really recommend it.
Here's the strength of this movie, and this will circle back to Frida also. I think Frida would have been better had it been predominantly in Spanish. I didn't like that Frida was in English. Whereas Under the Same Moon is almost entirely in Spanish.
Yeah.
It just would have, you know, it's better for performances also when that's their,
and it's that layer of reality,
primary language, and it's that layer of reality, exactly. So I wish Frida had been more in Spanish.
No, I get that.
Instead of Spanish speaking actors.
Did one thing that I noticed, speaking of languages, maybe this showed up in your version as well. There's a moment where the woman who gets people across the border illegally in Mexico is talking with a group of guys, and they start talking to each other in some sort of language that is obviously not Spanish. What did your subtitles say? Do you remember what they said?
I don't remember.
Mine said, and I thought that it was very interesting because I really latched onto it. And I thought that it was interesting because it goes into like something that I've been researching a little bit lately. It said Indian dialect. Or something to that effect. It was like,
oh, yeah. Yeah, and I think that's, you know, like, just like an indigenous dialect.
Exactly, yeah.
Just,
but it really caught me off guard. I was suddenly like, oh, are they talking about like Quechua and like that sort of thing?
Remember,
like, you know.
Yeah. Because it takes place in Mexico.
Yeah. And so suddenly I was like, oh, they're talking about some sort of indigenous dialect, but they have no, I guess whoever wrote the subtitles had no context whatsoever, and also didn't think to just write like indigenous language or, you know, like other language.
Know the word indigenous.
Yeah, you know, it's Indian dialect, and it really caught me off guard. And like I took a little like mental break.
Yeah.
As the rest of the scene played out, because I was like, the rest of the scene doesn't matter. I need to just suddenly hone in. What are they talking about? And like, I just played like a little mental game.
Why did the one guy call the other guy Chop Suey? Do you remember that?
No, I completely missed out.
It's
on that.
During the raid on the tomato place.
Oh, it's because there is one Asian guy.
Yeah. And like, well, why did you call him that? It's fucked up.
You know why. Nick, whenever you ask that question, you know why.
I always know why, folks. Life's horrible.
But no, I really enjoyed this movie quite a bit. It was quite interesting. I agree with you about Frida needing to probably, honestly, like, be in Spanish.
Yeah. Yeah, I was surprised when, like, it wasn't English, honestly.
Yeah. But, overall, I would honestly give Under the Same Moon,
thanks, Harvey Weinstein. Fuck you.
4.5 out of 5, honestly. How about you?
Oh, yeah, man. I don't care. Perfect. 5 out of 5. You did it. Congratulations. Good movie.
You know what? Sure. Why not? You swayed me. 5 out of 5.
Good movie. No notes.
While we're at it, I guess this is a good time to, you know, we already touched on a little bit briefly. Hispanic representation in film is definitely, and popular media and television and stuff like that, is definitely a little bit more of a harder thing to I think find a plethora, like an immediate well of content and information for.
Yeah.
I was doing, you know, to do a little bit of research, you know, for this, it definitely, you know, it was very quick when I was looking at what was available, you know, in some of the immediate searches, how limited a lot of the general perception was, and the sort of agreed upon, like, you know, sort of mainstream.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it comes. If you're talking about just like, but like American filmmakers.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Then yeah, it's all like the big ones.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know. There's a lot of great films that come out like every year, just like from their own countries,
respective countries. Yeah,
yeah, that are killer. And of course, I can't tell you any off the top of my head because my brain is terrible.
But no, it's you know, it's not like there's necessarily, I guess, you know, like for an example, like a Hispanic Jordan Peele, you know, operating, or some sort of, you know,
I don't know. What the heck is a Hispanic Jordan Peele?
You know what I mean, though, I guess. It doesn't feel, I guess, as though sometimes I feel like when I'm looking at the mainstream American experience of, like...
You're talking about how there should be, like,
It doesn't... It's,
like one for each kind of, like...
No, I guess
kind of
not, but it doesn't
genre,
feel
or-
like there's necessarily, I guess, still fair representation across the board.
No, definitely not. I mean, certainly not in...
And again, in a
certainly
mainstream
not in
American
roles.
experience, yeah. There's just
From
in
even just an
general,
acting
yeah.
perspective.
Across the board, I guess, is more what I'm getting at. There's still generally a lack of fair and even representation.
For everybody.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I know what you mean. It can definitely feel limited. You have to just seek it out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, for the time being.
Yeah.
And change is slow.
Yeah.
But you can help by giving those movies money.
Yeah.
You can...
And I wanted to, I guess, also try and find something... Part of the reason that I guess I did also pick this was because I did want to try and find something that I thought would be sort of generally accessible, on a more immediate level.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but neither of these are like some crazy...
No.
like, yeah. Like, hard to watch, hard to follow. Like,
no, yeah.
Mind-bending experience.
No, but again, that also goes back to, the fact that... at least with the first one with Frida, it's not directed by a Hispanic director. It is still directed by a white woman.
Yeah,
who studied mime at one point.
she can't be trusted. Difficult to work with indeed. Fucking mime. Oh, you broke me. What am I supposed to do with that information?
I don't know. Make of it what you will. Actually, she also studied, like, Japanese puppetry.
She studied the way of the... I don't even know what you'd call that.
And that's it.
That's just Kenkuro from Naruto. He's got the makeup and he has got the
It made me think of that scene in Frida where you see her doing the puppet show at the foot of her bed.
Yeah.
I was like, oh
more
man,
of that.
That's
cool.
Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, there's Julie Taymor's puppet thing.
Yeah,
that was the first thing
got
that
her
crossed my
puppets
mind.
in there
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
Which reminds me that we gotta pivot to Shang-Chi.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
I don't know. We don't
Go
have
for
to
it.
do
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I saw Shang-Chi. Well, I don't. This is like a huge spoiler. This is like the mid-credits spoiler.
Okay.
Never mind then. Don't worry about it.
I tell you what. We'll go ahead and we'll move on, sort of from our main films into the next part of the discussion, which is what we've been watching, but also trailers. So right before we recorded, we actually watched both the West Side Story trailer and the Nightmare Alley trailer. Any thoughts on those?
They both look pretty good. I don't know. I mean, those are two directors who just don't make bad movies, guys. That I'm aware of. Steven Spielberg and Guillermo
Steven
del
Spielberg
Toro.
has, 1945? Or 1942, whatever it is.
Oh, I've never seen that.
It's his, debacle of a World War II comedy with Jim Belushi.
What? I haven't seen all of Steven Spielberg's movies. I'm sorry. I take back what I said. I can't be honest about it. It's true, folks.
Also, we saw Temple of Doom, and that one is definitely not good. But no, I look forward to West Side. My wife and I were talking about it, and is West Side?
I'm not like.
It's not one of those that I'm like a diehard for.
I'm like truly not really familiar with West Side Story at all. It's never been a part of my life. Well, in any way, I know it's like a Romeo and Juliet type story. Like I think I get it, but I have never seen it like in any capacity, not on stage or.
Did you not go to the Northwest performance?
No, I didn't. I wasn't there. I was at school.
Okay.
I do not recall going to see West Side Story. Or we had broken up, or something like that.
I worked West Side Story.
Did not see. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I worked the fly rail.
Yeah.
No,
I wasn't there.
I know that show a little bit. You know, it's a fine show, and it looks like Steven's doing a good job. He's pulling more off of the more recent Broadway revival of the show, where it takes the Sharks songs, certain ones, and puts them into Spanish, or certain lyrics into Spanish, and also in the trailer you notice, you know, the main white kid of the gang, Tommy or whatever. You know who I'm talking about. The one that isn't Ansel Elgort.
Yeah.
Openly discussing, you know, essentially, like, I don't like it because people are moving in and I don't like the people that are moving here. And as far as I'm aware, like, the original West Side Story never got, like, that overt.
I see.
So with its racism
it's gonna
kind
have,
of
like,
stuff.
It's gonna have something to say.
Maybe. Maybe not. We'll see.
I mean,
it does have Broadway's Shrek in it.
It does by committee. Shrek!
It has Broadway's
He's here.
Shrek, yeah. He's playing one of the cops
party.
of the show.
That's great. Shrek.
Yeah.
They turn Shrek into a cop.
Shrek
is not a cop. How dare you? If I was that actor, I'd be like, by the integrity bestowed upon me by playing Shrek, I cannot play a cop.
He was Bad Brad in Molly's Game.
Or this Bad Brad? Is that hulking?
No, Bad Brad in Molly's Game was the guy who
Molly's
was terrible.
Game. What am I? I was
gambling.
thinking of Gerald's Game.
No, different game.
No,
movie.
Molly's Game. Jessica Chastain. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm with you now.
Yeah, that's Broadway Shrek. Is Bad Brad in Molly's Game.
Fantastic.
Yeah. He's also briefly in a John Oliver musical number.
This is very specific. Why do you know so much about the man who played Shrek on Broadway?
Because I saw him in all of these things, or like in different things beforehand, and then I learned that he was Broadway's Shrek, and I was like, that cemented where I've seen this man. Like, it really... It solidified in my memory where exactly I had seen him before.
It's called a career, folks. That's cool.
Nightmare Alley I'm looking forward to. I was talking with Lauren about it as well. Bradley Cooper's an actor that I like quite a bit, but I haven't had a Bradley Cooper movie that he was the star of that I've been really hyped for in a little while.
Not since, like, A Star Is Born. If you were excited about A Star Is Born.
I was not.
I liked A Star Is Born.
I'm glad. It was not for me.
I like it.
Hell yeah. Why not? Have you seen Crazy Heart?
Nope.
You might like that. If you like the Bradley Cooper Star Is Born, I feel like you'll definitely dig. I feel like he kind of did like A Star Is Born with like a little dash of Crazy Heart in there. And I think that if you ever watch Crazy Heart, you'll understand that.
Bradley Cooper's so weird.
It's a Jeff Bridges film. That's the one I think that got him his Oscar.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to Nightmare Alley. I love Guillermo. I love when Guillermo does horror. I love when Guillermo does anything.
Yeah, man. Doesn't miss.
No. Not a drop.
It doesn't miss, folks.
Like,
sorry.
He's always fascinating.
He's doing something.
Even if Crimson Peak is like his most sort of bland narrative, I guess, on a certain level, or most predictable narrative on a certain level, that's still a great film with incredible performances and fantastic set and costume production and overall artistic work on display. So he never misses. Not really.
Nope.
Pan's Labyrinth, incredible. Good Both movies. Hellboy films, great.
Pacific Rim.
Yeah, great time. Great time.
Good movie.
Way better than the second. I'll fight you if you want to go to the mat on which Pacific Rim is better.
Pacific Rim Uprising was upsetting.
Boring.
Upsetting experience.
It's a boring movie.
I was excited for it.
Yeah.
I wasn't worried about it. I said, how hard could it be?
You had no idea.
Turns out it's pretty hard. So I should have known.
Well,
that's on me.
it probably doesn't help that, most of these people don't have a clue how story works, so...
It's just so weird.
Yeah. But, no, I'm excited for Nightmare Alley. It's got a great cast. Willem Dafoe is literally probably the best working actor today.
He's the best.
It's got, as always, it's Ron Perlman is going to be appearing. And it's never a bad time for Ron Perlman. So, I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, yeah.
As far as what we've been watching, you said you saw Shang-Chi, so did you go to theaters and see it?
Yeah.
Okay. How was it?
I liked it a lot, and I talked about this before with you. I started out liking it a lot. I loved it when it hit the bus sequence. That's as good as it gets. So good. And then I'm still with it. I liked it about like halfway through. The more I liked it more when it was on like a street level kind of like kung fu movie. And the more fantastical it got, the further it got away from me. I liked it more when it was smaller. And the bigger, like exactly what I said. The bigger it got, the more I was like, I wish it had been more contained. I like the more smaller dramatic moments and the way it was impressive with its action choreography, like legitimately, for the most part.
All right, so now I gotta ask, what's the spoiler?
And what I was gonna say?
Yeah.
Oh god, now this is long-winded. I know I can't. Okay, well, the ending, the mid-credit scene of Shang-Chi. Sorry, everybody. It's Shang-Chi is and Katie, his friend Katie, are having dinner, and Wong opens up a portal in the middle of the restaurant. And he's like, "Come with me." And they're like, "What?" And he's like, "Come with me." So they go with him. And he's like, it's like almost like a trial, if we're being honest. He should seek out a lawyer immediately. It's Wong and who else is there? It's Captain Marvel. And this is the long one thing I was gonna say because Destin Daniel Cretton, mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm sorry to laugh at your name. It makes me think of the scene in Monsters Inc.
No,
Randall calls Mike Wazowski a cretin, and then he corrects him. And it's sorry. Anyway, I was all of his movies, like pretty much all of his movies, have Brie Larson in them, and he was like, he had to get her in there somehow. And God, it was something else that we were talking about. We're like, they had to get something in there for whatever movie we were talking about. Oh God, can't remember. You don't remember. Whatever.
I was more just honestly interested in what the spoiler was.
Sure. Okay. Well, it's Captain Marvel. It's Wong, Captain Marvel, and it's Bruce Banner, which is interesting enough in itself because it's Bruce Banner. It's not like the Professor Hulk. Like Endgame Hulk. It's Bruce Banner, and one of his arms appears to be broken. It's in a sling. So it's like, what is that? And they're studying the rings that Shang-Chi has. And they're like, I don't know what this is. I don't know where this is from. And they're like, where'd you get these? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, they're like 1,000 years old. My dad had them. And they're like, well, okay. Like, we're going to keep an eye on you. And they give it back. And, they're, then Bruce is like, welcome to the circus. And it's like, uh-oh.
Oh, obvious Avengers.
They're joining. Yeah. They're joining the craziness.
We're going to do Avengers. I guess
Let's
5
go!
now. Yeah. All right. You're gonna get me in copyright trouble.
I am. The mouse is on it immediately. He heard it through the phone. Okay.
Anything else you've been seeing?
Yeah, man, I saw *Malignant*.
Oh, how was
the new
it?
James Wan, and it's awesome.
Okay.
I loved it. So good. It's better if you just don't know anything about it.
Okay.
It starts off like regular James Wan. It's like kind of like a haunted house movie. You know, things go bump in the night, and then it turns into like a slasher movie. And then it turns into something else entirely, and it's completely wild.
Interesting. Okay.
It's a lot of fun.
Anything else?
What else have I seen? I saw a horror anthology movie called Bad Candy.
Okay.
And this stars the singer from Slipknot, Corey Taylor. And it's him and the main character from Gremlins. And they play radio DJs in this town, and it's Halloween. And, you know, they just, like, tell spooky stories, and they go into, like, each little segment. And it's alright. They have some pretty, like, inventive kind of scares in there. There's one scene, like, in a bathroom, that's, like, really intense. That's, like, genuinely, like, oh my god. That's, like, they have a couple legitimate scares in there. Some cool imagery. Sometimes it's just weird.
Okay.
Yeah, not terrible.
Okay.
Some interesting stuff.
Okay.
Some pretty bold effects for like a low budget thing. So
nice. I haven't been watching too many movies. I recently finished up Legend of Korra in full.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it. Imperfect, but very enjoyable. I recently also watched Spider-Man 3.
Lucky.
And then after that, I watched The Amazing Spider-Man. Less lucky. And then beyond that, I've...
Dude, can I say, like, I hate every person that interviews these folks and just annoys them with Marvel questions.
Yeah.
It's so awful. Like, you get to talk to Andrew Garfield about whatever, and you're just like, are you in the new Spider-Man? You're like, leave him alone.
Also, just find out.
Just find, like, I don't understand. Do you think you're gonna be the one to get him to break?
Well, you know, it's for the algorithm.
It's for the... It has to feed. It has to feed.
It's for the SEO.
I hate it, man. It sucks.
Yep. But that's also why I'm doing this instead of something else.
Remember when you could be surprised?
Yeah.
People don't want to be surprised anymore, but I mean, like, honestly, whatever. I mean, trauma. Sure.
Well, speaking, I guess, of trauma, what I have been watching is
Legend of Korra.
No, well, yes, obviously that has plenty of trauma, but I was gonna say, Lauren and I have been watching 2 documentary series. One is a rewatch for me, first time for her, Wormwood, which I really can't recommend enough if you haven't seen it. The premise is essentially a man named Eric Olson.
I can't take any more reality.
Goes and can't essentially come to terms with what the agreed upon story is of his father's death. And as he digs into it, it starts to sort of consume his life, and he eventually comes face to face with the reality of what his father's death actually meant, which in reality was an orchestrated event by the United States federal government.
Oh, great.
So it's a really, really great...
Get in line, dude.
And then I really enjoyed... We've been watching... really enjoyed, I guess, is not the right term. I've been engrossed with and fascinated with.
I've been tickled by.
No, not tickled. I've been sort of, I guess, picking at a scab on a certain level.
Sure.
I've been watching Turning Point, the Netflix documentary about 9/11 and essentially how it leads up to Afghanistan right before the withdrawal. And it's been really fascinating to get further and further into that journey and to go back and have 20 years of context and time to kind of look back at and reevaluate, even, you know, at a personal level, you know, sort of my understanding of the history and the events and that time and that day and everything that came after. And it's been really interesting, and it's
where it all went wrong.
And it's also been kind of affiliated with this kind of dive I've been going down lately of history and wanting a better context for certain things and a better understanding of certain things. You know, going back to the discussion about Frida, I feel sometimes unmoored from a context that leads to my front door, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I don't quite understand at every given moment because no one has ever really laid out for me in really grand detail in any class that I've ever taken.
Yeah.
You know, while we were dealing with Prohibition...
You're not meant to know.
You know, Mexico was dealing with this, while Japan was dealing with this. So I feel unmoored from, I guess, a greater world history, but also even a national history that really, for me, has all of the answers that I'm looking for. And so lately I've been very much interested in kind of going back and...
nothing retains.
Re-examining certain things and trying to recontextualize history from a certain perspective of I guess now, because I feel very particularly about now, and I really, I guess, want to re-examine my opinion on history and how it got to how I feel about here.
Let me tell you, dude.
And that feels like a rabbit hole of misery.
Let me tell you, things suck quite often if you look through history.
Yeah. So, it's not...
Shit is unnecessarily shitty.
So, it's been an interesting, I guess, little journey, and part of that has been, like, Wormwood and Turning Point, because, interestingly enough, there is at least a little bit of crossover that gives a whole nother context for history for me, which is Dick Cheney, you know, which was a part of the Bush administration at 9/11 and all of that, was also a part of the, very briefly, the administration that managed part of the story of Wormwood and part of the cover-up of Wormwood. And so...
And the two overlap.
Yeah, and so suddenly you have this, and then it suddenly paints a different picture of course, who you then see in you know, even though it's a fictional depiction, Vice. You know, because it is suddenly this further recontextualizing, because now you have hard evidence across, you know, sort of two perspectives that give you an insight into who the man was.
Yeah.
So anyhow, that's what I've been watching, though. And then actually I think we're going to watch it probably tomorrow maybe, or sometime this weekend. And again, I've seen it before. It'll be Lauren's first watch. We're going to watch the John Leguizamo special Latin History for Morons on Netflix, which if you haven't seen it, it's great.
You should see his movie that he directed.
Hell yeah.
It's called Critical Thinking.
Okay.
It's a chess movie.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Pretty
I'll
good.
give it a watch. I love John Leguizamo. He's one of my...
Yeah.
That's an actor that I want more of on my screen.
For sure. Yeah, he's...
criminally underutilized.
He's both in it, and he directed it.
Hell yeah.
It came out like last year, 2 years ago. Last year, I think.
Well, Nick, do you have any final thoughts for the listeners?
Oh, jeez, I don't know. I'll plug myself.
Yeah, go for it. Plug yourself.
If you guys go to Discussing Film, I have an interview with James DeMonico coming up. He's the guy that made the Purge movies. He made the Purge franchise.
Oh.
And he has a new movie coming out called This Is the Night. And I talked to him about it. Talked a little bit about the Purge. Mostly talked about this new movie. Yeah. And as always, stay safe. It's crazy out there.
No, that's fair. I'll say this. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month.
Hooray.
It runs, for those of you who don't know, from mid-September to mid-October. And it's sort of because, essentially, this is a time where several countries gained or declared independence. And so, like, the 15th itself is when I think, like, Nicaragua and like 2 other countries declared independence. And then, of course, the 16th is... Or, no, gained independence. Then, of course, the 16th is Mexican Independence Day. So it's sort of a...
It appears to be a good time.
It's you know, sort of this period that starts now because it coincides with a lot of historical events, and it runs from now until mid-October. And film is always a good way to sort of examine our culture and our understanding of our culture and our understanding of ourselves. And it's also a great way to empathize with people. And so the more varied perspectives that you put on screen, you know, not that any of you people, I guess, necessarily need to know this. Maybe some of you do. The more varied perspectives that you put on screen, but also, that you expose yourself to intentionally, that are outside of what you know.
Yeah.
The more empathetic you will become with the world around you, because you'll get to live for a moment with these people and with their experience. And
that's the idea, folks.
Yeah. And if you can, go out for the next month, you know, and expose yourself to more Hispanic films and content and music and art and culture and history. And, you know, if you want, as it goes into October, tie it into horror. Go out and find, you know, Hispanic horror films and that kind of thing. And take it down that route.
There's plenty of those.
Yeah.
You can literally look that up on Shudder.
Yeah. And so
You have Shudder.
Go out and have a good time and get a little bit more empathetic through film, everybody.
Yeah.
As always, have a good time. If you don't already, follow us on Instagram at the Film Buds Podcast and at Twitter at Film Buds. Check out our website. I recently posted one of my old horror essays. It's all on The Final Girl and the slasher film. It's pretty cool. And thanks for listening. As always, I'm Paul. Bye.